The Pokemon movies are always an interesting topic of debate, not on whether they're good or not cause let's be honest, most of them kinda suck, but whether or not the movies are canon to the main anime timeline or not. Now what does canon mean? Canon is basically the term used to describe something that is official to the source material. Is it truly part of the anime or does it not count? I've been thinking about this question a lot lately, cause I've been including the movies as part of my rewatch of the entire Pokemon anime. Now sure, most people these days would write off the movies as non-canon, but back in the day, the movies used to heavily tie into Ash's journey. So in this video, let's figure out which Pokemon movies are truly canon to the anime and which ones are not. I'll also be going over exactly when these movies take place for those of you who also want to include the movies in your rewatch of the anime. To start off, let's get the obvious out of the way. Movies 20, 21, 22, and 23 are all non-canon movies. Movie 20 started the trend of taking place in an alternate universe where Ash goes on a completely different journey than the one we're used to, so obviously this doesn't fit in the anime, like at all. I guess if you want to include it in an anime rewatch, this should go all the way in the beginning, even before the first episode as a what if scenario before diving into Ash's actual journey. Now even though the other movies are non-canon as well, interestingly enough, they could fit into the anime, but I'll save that for later. For now though, I think it's best to go in chronological order. So let's go to Movie 1. This movie is 100% canon. This is probably the most canon a movie has ever been since we get multiple anime episodes teasing and building up to the movie. For example, episode 63 features the debut of Mewtwo as Giovanni uses it to battle Gary, and we see this in the movie. We also have episode 65 where Mewtwo escapes and destroys the original Team Rocket headquarters just like he does in the beginning of the movie. So yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that this movie is canon, and we all know this. But when does it take place? This is the interesting part, as there are 3 possible time frames this movie could fit. The first one is between episode 66 and 67. I say this because these 2 episodes take place right after Mewtwo's escape and has Ash visiting Seafoam Islands. In the beginning of the movie, we see Ash and the gang hanging out by the ocean, so it could be that they're still at Seafoam at this point. The second placement is between episode 72 and 73. This is because there's a brief timeskip of about 3 weeks before the League in episodes 71 and 72 to 1 day before the League in episode 73, so the movie could easily fit in this time frame. The last placement is the most likely to be honest, and that's between episode 69 and 70. Episode 69 has Ash and friends take part in a movie, and by episode 70, the movie they filmed is already done. So it's likely that there was a brief timeskip of a few weeks where the first movie could have happened. There's also the fact that these 2 episodes are movie related. A few trends you'll notice in this video is that 1. Pokemon movies always release in July, 2. The movies can usually fit within the episodes near its release, and 3. The anime has this sort of gimmick where they try to have movie related episodes take place around the same time a movie is released, for obvious reasons. Episodes 69 and 70 aired in November of 98. Not in July when the first movie premiered, but you gotta take into account the fact that thanks to our little friend Porygon 1 year prior, the Pokemon anime was put on hiatus for 4 months. And what do you know? If that 4-month hiatus never happened, the episode would have aired the same month the first movie premiered in July. So I think we have our winner. Next is Movie 2. This movie is also canon. This is thanks to episode 220. In it, we're introduced to Silver, the baby Lugia. Ash and Misty know what a Lugia is by then and even mention that they've seen one in the Orange Islands. That's a direct reference to the movie. As for its placement, I have it right after episode 105, as that's the episode that Charizard finally obeys Ash, and we see him being obedient in the movie. Movie 2 actually premiered just a few days before episode 105, so it kinda spoiled Charizard listening to Ash. Oops. Movie 3. In episode 263, an unknown gets separated from his friends and Ash and the gang recognize it. The only other time they've seen an unknown to even know what it is in movie 3. Therefore, this movie is also canon. A really good way to figure out where the movies could take place is to look at everyone's teams within the movie. They usually reflect the same Pokemon everyone has within the episodes near the movie's release. When it comes to movie 3, it could honestly take place anywhere between episode 154, where Ash catches Noctowl, and episode 165, where Brock Zubat evolves into Golbat. I personally just watched it after episode 155 since that was the episode to come out right before the movie's premiere. Mewtwo Returns. Although not technically a movie, I feel like I should still address this special as it is a sequel of sorts to the first movie, but that's not enough to confirm its canonicity. To do that, we'll have to look at episode 115 of Advanced. In this episode, Jesse uses Meowth in a Pokemon contest and has him make an ice sculpture of Giovanni. Brock says it looks awfully familiar, and that's because he's seen Giovanni before. The only time Brock has seen Giovanni was in the Mewtwo Returns special, so this has to be canon. More proof can be found in movie 16 because Ash recognizes Mewtwo. Although his memory was erased in the first movie, Mewtwo allowed Ash and his friends to keep their memory in Mewtwo Returns, but more on that Mewtwo stuff when I get to movie 16. Its placement should be between episodes 178 and 179, as this is the way it was aired on TV. Movie 4. For this one, we're gonna have to take a look at episode 155 of the Advanced series. This marks Celebi's first appearance in an anime episode. However, Ash and Brock already knew what it was. The only time they've seen one prior to this is in movie 4. Therefore, this movie is canon. This movie can take place anywhere between episode 199, where Chikorita evolves into Bayleaf, and episode 208, when Ash reaches Olivine City for the first time. It can't really happen anytime after Ash's first visit to Olivine, since he takes a ship to Cianwood, which directly leads into the next episode, and right after that is when the World Island saga begins. I like to think that this movie is followed by episode 206 because it starts out with Ash and the gang in a huge forest with a lake similar to the final setting of the movie. This is probably why it was the episode to air right after the movie. Movie 5. This is another movie that is canon. This is because of Diamond and Pearl episode 189. We all know this one. Tobias sends out a Latios after his Darkrai is defeated, and both Ash and Brock recognize it. The only time a Latios has appeared before this episode was in movie 5, so there you go. That means the Latios from the movie is canon. So you never know, guys, Ash can still catch her. Nah, yeah, I doubt it. This movie can be watched anywhere between episode 247, where Misty's Poliwhirl evolves into Politoed, and episode 257, where Ash gets the Larvitar egg. Honestly, I think the best placement for this movie is the placement for when it was released, between episode 256 and 257. This is because both episodes take place in aquatic locations. I do not think it was a coincidence because the 5th movie takes place in Altamar, a city that's literally all about water, so it's possible they stopped by there between the 2 episodes. Movie 6. Now, many fans would say this is the point where the Pokemon movies started to not be canon, but ironically enough, it's Unova Ash, the forgetful one, that disproves this. As in Black and White episode 132, we get Jirachi's first anime appearance since the movie, and Ash actually remembers it. It's literally a blink and you'll miss it kind of moment, but as soon as Ash sees Jirachi, he's shocked and says, "That's," and then gets cut off by the Pokedex. This brief literal 2-second moment implies that Ash actually does remember what a Jirachi is. It's just that Black and White likes to keep details like this minimal and vague so they can stay consistent with the idea that this is a reboot of sorts and Ash shouldn't remember anything. Even though Charizard comes back. But okay, I'm getting off track. Point is, Ash remembers Jirachi even though Black and White wants to cover that up. So movie 6 is canon. Now the placement is actually a bit interesting. The movie aired between episode 34 and 35 of Advanced, but it can't take place there because the gang was at Slayport City for May's first contest. I believe it's meant to take place right after episode 36, which is the episode Team Magma attacks the Oceanic Museum and the one where the gang finally leaves Slayport. In this episode, Team Magma are, you know, doing their thing, trying to summon their Lord and Savior Groudon, and we even see a silhouette of it in a fantasy sequence. This seems like the perfect foreshadowing and setup episode for the movie, since in it, Butler's goal is to resurrect Groudon with Jirachi to prove Team Magma wrong. So there you go, after episode 36. Movie 7. LaRue City, the main setting of the movie, is later revealed to be Drew's hometown in episode 180 of the Advanced series, so this makes the location canon, but maybe that's not enough to prove that the events of the movie are. So our next evidence can be found in episode 171 of Advanced, where Solana uses Professor Lund's Deoxys research for her mission. The very same research and character from movie 7, so this is definitely canon. Although movie 7 came out between episode 85 and 86 of Advanced, this movie best fits after episode 86. In episode 85, Ash defeats Winona and gets his 6th gym badge. The following episode, 86, picks up right after that as we see Ash looking at his badge as he usually does after getting one. Plus, episode 86 is another movie-related episode, which is the perfect fourth wall-breaking wink to let you know that it's about time to watch the movie. Movie 8. Now this movie, without a doubt, is canon. This is because movie 8 introduced the concept of aura and Ash's ability to use it. Well, in Diamond and Pearl, it's brought up again, specifically in episodes 56 and 71. Now that might not be enough for some, but thankfully, there's episode 66 of Diamond and Pearl. In this episode, we have Lucario's episodic debut, but also Ash recognizes it. The only other time Ash is seen one is in movie 8. This movie takes place pretty early into Ash's Battle Frontier run based off his team, and it even aired between episode 134 and 135 of Advanced. This is the perfect placement honestly, as 134 is when Misty leaves the group, and it's right before the Battle Factory in episode 135. The Mastermind of Mirage Pokémon. I'm not doing this one. Fine. The Mastermind of Mirage Pokémon is a special specifically made by the Pokémon Company International to celebrate Pokémon's 10th anniversary. Because it was created over here in the West, it wasn't actually part of the anime. It's 100% non-canon. Our first in the timeline. But does it really count? This thing is so non-canon and bad that it shouldn't have existed. So let's pretend like it doesn't. But I guess if you want to include it in your anime rewatch, it best fits after episode 157 of Advanced. In Mastermind of Mirage Trash, Pikachu uses the move Volt Tackle, which is learned in episode 150. But that's the same episode May gets her Eevee egg. And since we don't see her traveling with said egg in the special, this probably takes place after it hatches in episode 157. Now let's move on from this. Movie 9. This one is our first maybe movie. These are movies that could be canon, but there's just not clear enough evidence to support its canonicity or debunk it. Manaphy doesn't really make any major anime appearances after this movie, so we still haven't gotten any references to this movie ever happening. The only sorta hint is with Chatot. It makes its debut in the movie under the ownership of Phantom. The episode to air right after this movie was episode 184 of Advanced, which also features a Chatot. In this episode, Ash doesn't recognize this Pokemon, but Brock and Max do. It's conflicting because Brock and Max, being the smart ones of the group, are typically knowledgeable about Pokemon that clearly never existed, so this could just be one of those moments. If that's the case, and this is Ash's first time seeing a Chatot, then the movie should take place right after this episode. But if this movie were to take place before the episode, it would explain why Brock and Max know of it, but wouldn't really make sense for why Ash would say, "Who's that Pokemon?" So honestly, this is very vague and there's not enough evidence to go on. I say movie 9 should go right after this episode to avoid any weird contradictions. Movie 10. This movie is canon. Movie 10 is absolutely canon because not only did Ash and the gang know what a Darkrai was in episode 104 of Diamond and Pearl, but the same lunar wing that Dawn gets in the movie is seen in this episode. The movie premiered between episode 39 and 40 of Diamond and Pearl. However, in episode 40, the gang mentions how awesome it would be to meet Dialga and Palkia, so obviously they haven't yet. It seems like this was meant to be a bit of foreshadowing for the movie since that's when they encounter them, so it should take place right after this episode. Movie 11. Now this is where things get interesting, because movie 11 is a sequel to movie 10, but that's not really a solid reason for why this movie is canon. This movie features the debut of Regigigas, but it isn't really specified whether or not the gang recognizes it in episode 129 of Diamond and Pearl. So that's why we have to look at episode 168. In this episode, Ash and the gang meet Marley, who's caring for a shaman. And what do you know? They know what a shaman is. The only other time they've seen one is in movie 11, making this movie also canon. This movie can take place anywhere between episode 85 when Gligar evolves into Gliscor and episode 100 when Turtwig evolves into Grotto. Just don't interrupt the summer camp arc. It premiered between episode 86 and 87, so that's actually just fine. Movie 12. Now you might think this movie is also canon because it's a follow-up to the previous two movies, but interestingly enough, there's not enough evidence to prove this movie is canon. So it is a maybe. There's also not anything in the series that contradicts this movie, so it's not canon if that makes sense. Arceus is one of the new Pokemon introduced in the movie, but its only other appearance is in another movie, so that doesn't help. Heatran also debuts in this movie, and even returns in Diamond and Pearl episode 169, but it's not really specified if the gang remember it or not. Interestingly enough though, Team Rocket are the ones who recognize Heatran, but in the movie, they don't go back in time with Ash to where they could have met one. They've never seen it, on screen at least, so there's that. This movie has a few possible placements. No matter what, it has to happen after episode 133, as that's when Ash leaves Lake Acuity with his newly evolved Monferno. It can happen between that and episode 138, as that's when the Twin Leaf Festival arc begins. It could also happen right after that arc ends in episode 141, but the latest has to be before episode 143, as that's when Dawn gets her Cyndaquil. So anywhere between those two episodes is fine. Movie 13. Now this movie is getting a big fat maybe for me. The only new Pokemon in this movie are Zorua and Zoroark, but because Black and White Ash is supposed to have a fresh start, it's very ambiguous as to whether or not Ash recognizes these Pokemon. Both times when these Pokemon debut in the anime, Silent is the one who cuts in and says what Pokemon it is before Ash even has a chance to say anything. So yeah, we just don't know. Now its placement is interesting. The movie premiered between episode 183 and 184 of Diamond and Pearl, but that's right in the middle of the Sinnoh League, so it has to happen before it. Here's the thing though. After Ash wins at the Sunyshore Gym, they're traveling by boat directly to the Sinnoh League, but in the movie they aren't really doing that yet. So this movie should take place between episode 177, the end of the Grand Festival, and 179 before the Sunyshore Gym battle. This is the last time Ash and the gang travel by land in the Diamond and Pearl series, cause every time after that, it's by sea. Movie 14. These movies are 100% non-canon. Yay, our first ones! Leave it to black and white, I tell ya. We're not counting Mastermind. First off, there's 2 movies. That already raises some red flags cause both definitely can't be canon. And it kinda wouldn't make sense for one to be canon and the other one to be the fake one. What would be the point of making 2 movie versions then? Oh. Now if you want some actual concrete evidence, then look no further than Black and White episode 110, where the gang meets N. They have a talk about the Unova legendaries Reshiram and Zekrom, and Iris makes a statement about how she would love to meet them someday. This implies she hasn't, meaning these movies never happened, doesn't matter the version. Now just cause they're not canon doesn't mean you can't enjoy these movies, so let's look at their possible placement. Movie 14 premiered between episode 39 and 40 of Black and White. This is right in the middle of the Nimbasa Town Club Battle Tournament arc, so it can't really fit there. I believe it's meant to take place right before episode 38, which happens to be another movie related episode. And fun fact, if the Team Rocket vs Team Plasma 2-parter wasn't cancelled, this episode would have come out right after the movie. So I'm pretty sure this was the intention. Now one last thing about movie 14, and this is a personal preference, but I always go with the Zekrom version. Considering Zekrom is the legendary Ash sees when he arrives to Unova, it's the version that makes the most sense honestly. The anime might have gone absolutely nowhere with his plotline, but at least we have the movie to satisfy our Ash and Zekrom team up desire. That's my own headcanon at least. Movie 15. So this one will be getting a maybe from me. There is 0 references to the movie in the anime, and none of the new Pokemon appear in an anime episode to help confirm or deny this. I'm serious. Kyurem, Cobalion, Virizion, Terrakion, and Keldeo do not make a return appearance. That's not in the movie. So there's not much to say here. The movie was released between Black and White episode 87 and 88, but it can't take place here. At this point, Ash and the gang are in Eastern Unova with Dawn, so that doesn't fit. Considering there's only Unova Pokemon in this movie, it most likely takes place in Western Unova, as Eastern Unova is where all the previous gen Pokemon start to show up again. So this movie has to happen before Ash meets with Cynthia at Verbank City. I say the best spot for this movie is right before episode 82, and it's another movie related episode at Pokestar Studios. Movie 16. This one is definitely canon. This is thanks to the teasing and foreshadowing done in the anime leading up to the movie. In Black and White episode 110, we see N discovering the Genesect research left over by Team Plasma. And in episode 119, we see a flashback of when the exact same Genesect from the movie escaped Team Plasma's castle. So there's no question that this movie is canon. Also, a little extra detail that I brought up earlier, Ash knows what a Mewtwo is. After their first encounter, Ash is like,
"Hold on, I am,"
until getting cut off by Mewtwo's introduction. Similar to the Jirachi episode, this is implying that Ash recognizes the Pokemon even though it's not the same one from the first movie and Mewtwo Returns. I always like this little detail. Now although most movies' placements are close to the theatrical release, this one is a bit farther away. The movie was released between episode 133 and 134 of Black and White, during the Decolor Islands arc, if you remember that existing. The thing is though, Ash's official character bio for the movie states that he's still traveling in Unova during the movie, so that means it can't take place anywhere near its release. The latest it can take place is before episode 123, as that's when the gang leaves Unova. I think that's the best placement because it happens right after the Team Plasma arc, so this movie is sorta like a Team Plasma DLC in a way. Movie 17. Just like most movies, the way to figure out its canonicity is by seeing if the main cast recognizes Pokemon introduced within the movie. Well, episode 41 of XY features Xerneas after its movie debut, but the gang doesn't know what it is. This might not be solid evidence as the episode could take place before the movie, so we need a bit more. Well, later on in episode 123, we get Carbine's anime debut, a Pokemon that also played a big part in movie 17, yet nobody recognizes it either. That's 2 separate instances, so that pretty much confirms that movie 17 is non-canon. This movie was released between XY episode 35 and 36, but the thing is, this movie is meant to take place a bit after that. The movie features Ash's evolved Fletchinder and Froakies' newly learned cut, but those don't happen till episode 36 and 38. Whoops. And because shortly after those episodes we get the Sycamore Summer Camp arc, where the gang encounters Xerneas, I think this episode should be used as a bit of foreshadowing before the movie. So I think the best placement for movie 17 is right after episode 42 when the summer camp ends. Movie 18. Just like movie 15, there's not enough evidence for this one. Sure, there's legendaries galore, but this doesn't really tie into the anime episodes or anything. Hoopa is the only new Pokemon, and it hasn't appeared since then. So this one is gonna be a maybe. Its placement can be anywhere between episode 76, where Ash gets Noibat, and episode 85, where Braixen gets that stupid ribbon on its stick, because it doesn't have one in the movie. The best placement for me is right after episode 78, which is, you guessed it, another movie episode. Movie 19. Now at first, I could have swore this movie was canon. The biggest reason is that in the opening sequence, we see Alon facing Karina, which happens during episode 123 of XY. This actually makes it super easy to place. The movie goes right after that episode. However, just because we see anime events within a movie doesn't mean it's canon. One of the biggest red flags is the fact that we see Squishy become complete Zygarde in the movie. Excuse me? How? Later in the anime, it's established that both Zygarde cores have to be in agreement in order to combine and use all their cells. How is this possible in the movie if by then Z2 was still under Team Flare's capture? This completely contradicts what's shown in the anime. Plus, let's be honest, complete Zygarde was cooler there too. The next nail in the coffin moment can be found in Sun and Moon episode 127. In this episode, Lily introduces the gang her father's Magearna, but Ash doesn't recognize it. To him, this is his first time seeing one. Well, considering Magearna, a Pokemon that was a big part of the movie, wasn't recognized by Ash, that tells me that movie 19 is non-canon. Now that I've gone over all of those movies, that brings us back to all the AU Ash movies. And although all of them are non-canon, they can still somewhat fit into an anime rewatch. I've already used movie 20 as an example on how you can kinda watch it before everything else, but let's take a look at all the others. Prepare to be surprised. Movie 21. The Power of Us started the trend of continuing the journeys of AU Ash, but keeping him in a self-contained story. And what I mean by that is that there are no references to what other journeys this Ash has been on or what Pokemon he has. In this movie, it's just Ash and Pikachu on a random adventure. This might seem like it'll make it hard to place the movie because of how isolated it feels, but I actually found the best spot. I believe movie 21 could fit between the final episode of XY and the first episode of Sun and Moon. There's no direct transition between these two series, so this movie could easily just be considered as a fun one-off adventure Ash went on between regions. Also, movie 21's art style is often regarded as a perfect blend between XY and Sun and Moon's art style. So this movie could be a good segue between the two series, and it makes the art style transition a little less jarring. Movie 22. What makes this movie non-canon is the fact that there are a few changes made that weren't in the originals, like adding a few more scenes with Charizard, a few new interactions, and having some of Mewtwo's cloned Pokemon use moves that didn't exist back then. However, most of the original movie's story remains intact, so it can honestly be watched over the original if you so choose. And in all honesty, in some ways, I sort of prefer this version over the original. Plus, when you think about it, it doesn't really matter what version you watch, cause in the end, Mewtwo does erase everyone's memory anyways. And finally, movie 23. This is the latest Pokemon movie, and based off the hat, we can tell that this is still AU Ash. The outfit he wears in the movie is clearly based off of Ash's outfit in Pokemon Journeys, so it kinda makes sense to try to fit this movie somewhere near that series. And since this looks like another standalone journey for Ash, thanks to the exclusion of Go, I think this movie best fits somewhere before Ash ends up meeting Go and working under Professor Cerise. So just like movie 21, I see movie 23 being a good series transition, this time taking place between the end of Sun and Moon and the start of Pokemon Journeys. It seems like another good fit that wouldn't really cause much confusion since there's no direct transition between Sun and Moon and Journeys, so we can just treat this like an adventure Ash had before meeting Go. So there you have it, 12 canon, 5 possibly canon, and 8 non-canon. Were you surprised with the final outcome? This just shows that a lot of these movies are canon and are considered to be a true part of Ash's journey. It seems like especially during the first 4 generations, this was the intention, but by the time we get to Gen 5 and 6, that's when things start to get very questionable and contradictory. Maybe that's why they went with the alternate universe approach starting Gen 7. With the long history the Pokemon anime has and all the different movies and writers over the years, it probably gets harder and harder to track all the important details and make it fit with whatever is currently happening in the series. And with all the good things I've been hearing about movie 21, maybe this was the right choice. But anyways, I hope this video was able to clear any confusion you had about the Pokemon Movies canon, and I hope this helps with your anime rewatch if you ever plan on doing one. Now if you excuse me, I gotta catch up on some anime episodes myself. I promise I'll get to movie 21. Eventually. This video is sponsored by Raycon. These are the everyday E25 earbuds and are the best model yet. With 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a more compact design that gives you a nice, noise-isolating fit. They even come in some cool colors. Raycon earbuds start at about half the price of any other premium wireless earbuds, which is a big deal, and sound just as amazing as other top audio brands you know. Raycons are great for working from home, working out, and listening to music or podcasts like The Anti-Poke Bros. So go to buyraycon.com/LumosTrainerZach to get 15% off your order, or click the link in the description. Thanks again, Raycon. Thanks for watching, everyone. Remember to live your life to the fullest and have yourself a damn good one.